Hello everyone, welcome to this session on the art and science of answer writing. Today we will explore how to write effective and high quality answers by analyzing a topper's answer sheet. We will look into some of the answers written by Archit Dongre, who has secured All India Rank 3 in the UPSC Civil Service Examination 2024. Archit has written these answers as a part of Enlite IAS Mains Test Series 2024. Before we check into the answers of Archit, let's learn some basics of answer writing. Whenever you see a mains question, you should follow a simple but effective method before start writing so that you don't write bad answers. So this includes around 4 steps. And the very first step, you should read the question at least twice. You should carefully read the question at least twice so that you get the core of the question or crux of the question. And in the first reading, focus on grasping the core theme or the central theme of the question, the context and the relevance of the question. And in the second reading, you try to find out the key words, key areas and how many parts or different parts of the question. And simultaneously, you should brainstorm a rough structure that you are going to write while also considering the indicative or the directive of the question, like discuss, critically analyze, explain, etc. And in the second step, you should plan your introduction. Think of a relevant introduction, just something that sets the tone of your answer. You don't need to spend too much time in this first 2 steps. You should wrap up this first 2 steps within 1.5 minutes. And in the third step, obviously, you start writing. Remember, don't overthink the introduction, just get going, okay? And while you're writing, you should structure your answer with exact, clear subheadings, and you should prioritize arguments of your points as per the demand of the question. Okay, and throughout the process of writing, you should maintain clarity, brevity and depth of the answer. And the final step is obviously conclusion. Always conclude with a practical, balanced and a forward looking line. So this is the basics. Now let's see how Archit has applied this exact method and elevated his answer to a topper's level. Okay, first let's read out the question. As India's interest move beyond its borders, the fixation with South Asia-centric notion of neighborhood can no longer serve as a useful analytical framework in understanding and explaining India's regional diplomacy. The key word here is discuss. Okay. So we need to read the question again. As India's interests move beyond its borders, the fixation with South Asia-centric notion. Let's underline the keywords. South Asia-centric notion of neighborhood. So this is the core theme is about neighborhood or regional diplomacy. Okay. Now how many parts? As India's interests move beyond its border, the fixation with South Asia-centric notion does no longer serve as a useful analytical framework in understanding and explaining India's regional diplomacy. So the question says the South Asia-centric approach of regional diplomacy is no longer enough to fulfill India's aspirations. So we need to move beyond the immediate neighborhood. So this is what the crux of the question. And as per the basics, you should also structure your answer, a rough structure, So there should be an introduction which is apt for the answer. Then in the first part, what is the issue with South Asia centric notion of regional diplomacy? What are the problems with this approach? And why should India go beyond its immediate neighborhood? Then what are the problems with that approach? Okay. And at the end, since it is a 10 marker, you don't need to write too many dimensions, but maybe you can also, at least in the conclusion part, you can say how to balance this or how to have a proper way of regional diplomacy. Let's check how Archit has done or how Archit has written this answer. According to the World Bank, the South Asian region is the least economically integrated region compared to other regions like ASEAN, EU, etc. So, in the introduction itself, Archit is saying the immediate neighborhood approach is no longer enough through a observation by World Bank, right? It is the least integrated region. So, India has to go beyond its immediate neighborhood. So the central theme is immediate neighborhood to extended neighborhood. That is the idea. Immediate to extended neighborhood. Okay. The fixation no longer serve purpose. This is what Archit's subheading. So, or you can write the issues with the focus on immediate neighborhood. Okay. And the first point of Archit is India's dominance. India being the dominant player must go beyond, look beyond the region. Why? Because China is dominating here. China is intruding into India's borders and also showing aggressiveness in South Asia. So we need to, like, already there is a competition. We can go beyond that. That is what Archit is saying. And also scale of trade. See, India's aspirations are no longer, it cannot be completely fulfilled by the neighborhood. The scope for trade is not much here. That is what Archit's second point. You should prioritize your point. So India's trade with USA is 80 billion and it is just 13 billion with Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is our largest trading partner in the neighborhood. Still it is far beyond or far less than what is India's trade with USA. Okay, so very good point. And see how Archit is substantiating each and every point with examples or data. This is what you should practice. Okay. Now, the third point, aspirations to become a superpower. See, South Asia, you can be a regional power, but to become a superpower, need to engage with different countries. Like India, ECT, FTA signed recently. India is looking for Central Asia. India is looking for Southeast Asia, India's Act East policy, Connect Central Asia policy, West Asia policy. So this is what the extended neighborhood is indicating. Okay. Now let's move to the next page. Necessity of diaspora. Indian diaspora is far and wide, so need to ensure their safety and well-being. Therefore, we have to move out or to go beyond the immediate neighborhood. Resources and trade, new technology like semiconductor, need interaction with Africa and Mercosur countries or Latin American countries, Australia, etc. So India is moving beyond. Archit has also indicated that the evidences of this shift from India's shift in India's foreign policy. And see another dimension. This is how you enrich your answer. Okay, still we must focus deeply in South Asia. Why? Being our neighborhood, it must be focus on 3 U's. This is an observation or idea by Dr. Jaishankar. Unresolved disputes, unsettled borders, unintegrated region. So because of these reasons, we need to focus on the neighborhood or the South Asia. Okay. And implications of security. To secure the country from both external and internal threats, we need to focus on the regional diplomacy or the immediate neighborhood. And trade and connectivity, supply chain resilience and trade require integrated region for projects like IMEC, TAPI pipeline, etc. Hence, South Asia must come together with unity of voice, unity of purpose. See, this is how you write a conclusion: forward-looking, optimistic, practical, and balanced. Here, you can also add some of the points like SARC is defunct or dysfunctional. So there is no active organization to integrate the region. Plus, you can write about Pakistan. Pakistan, one of the major country in the region, but not being cooperative with India. You can write that also. These are the issues with the South Asia centric notion, and why India is going beyond that. You can say Central Asia can provide energy, or it can supply. It can be an alternate source of energy, both natural gas and uranium, and then it can be a market to India's finished goods, and India can have goodwill. India can gain goodwill through connecting Central Asia, because these are some of the landlocked countries of Asia. So some points are missing, but this is clearly showing how you should write an answer, and definitely this will fetch 5 or 6 marks. So this is what the first answer of Archit. Let's move to the second question. As the world grapples with the urgency of climate change, critically evaluate India's evolving climate change policy and its effectiveness as a leading voice for the global south in international negotiations like COP28. First reading. Let's go for the second reading. As the world grapples with the urgency of climate change. So climate change, a keyword. Critically evaluate India's evolving climate change policy. Okay, India's evolving climate change policy and its effectiveness as a leading voice of the global south in international negotiations like COP28. So this is about climate diplomacy and whether India can be or whether India's policies are effective or not. That is what the question or crux of the question is. And the key word here is critically evaluate. Okay. How many parts? So in the first part you can mention about India's, definitely there should be an introduction, and in the first part you can mention about India's evolving climate change policy, or what is India's current policy, and the success of India's policies in platforms like or in international negotiations like COP28, and the drawbacks or failures, and then maybe in the conclusion you can write a way forward, or one-liner or two-liner. Okay, now let's see what is Archit's answer. Climate change is going to affect all aspects of life in all countries, directly or indirectly. Bilateral Committee report emphasized the need for sustainable development. Okay, you can write a better introduction, but this is setting the tone. That is how you don't need to spend too much time here also. Like, you should not write the perfect introduction. You don't need to write that. Just set the tone. Just get the going. Okay. Now India's climate change policy, or India's evolving climate change policy. Definitely you need content to write such excellent answers, but with practice and consistency you can achieve this quality. So don't worry. Okay. Panchamrit targets or Panchamrit goals: 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel energy, 50% of energy from renewable sources, 45 reduction of carbon emission intensity by 45%, then additional carbon sink, then most importantly net zero by 2070. Okay, so this is the core of the India's climate change policy internationally, or climate change diplomacy. This is what India is trying to project. Then PLI schemes, National Hydrogen Mission. You can also write National Climate Change Action Plan, NCAP, National Climate Change Action Plan. Then International Solar Alliance. Then Rooftop Solar Project, or Mangroves for Future, or MISTI scheme. There are multiple ways you can add points here. National Climate Change Action Policy, Action Plan. Then, yeah. India's, okay, now Archit has written a subheading, COP28 and India, its effectiveness, within a single subheading. So, what are the successes? India emphasized on Panchamrit, or nationally determined contributions, Global Biofuel Alliance, or ISA. Then, sorry, both are different, okay. Green Credit Initiative, you can mention about loss and damage, and also India being vocal about a very important principle, that is CBDR, Common but Differentiated Responsibility. This is something that India is arguing for as a leader of Global South. Yes, the responsibility is common, but it should be differentiated, because we need to develop first. So we need to use coal. So it is, in the case of Global South countries, it should be facing down instead of completely phasing out coal. Okay, then Lead IT 2.0. Okay, now you should also mention what are the issues with India's policy. That part is somewhat missing here. You can write implementation gap. Though India's aspirations or the targets are very ambitious, but we are yet to achieve the same. Then this issue we are not ready to phase out completely, but this is very justifiable. Then the technology or the infrastructure gap. Then India is not part of Global Methane Initiative. So you can write that also. India is not part of Global Methane Initiative. Then what can be done to become the leader of Global South in the context of climate change diplomacy? What can be done more involvement of people and civil society. Then Secure Himalaya project, regional project, and Miyawaki afforestation, and promotion of green energy and low emission fuels of CNG. You can also write a very optimistic conclusion here. India can be a leader of Global South in the context of climate change diplomacy by highlighting the principle of CBDR. Okay, so this is about the second question. Let's move to the third one. In the context of evolving global order, critically examine the significance and potential challenges associated with India, Middle East, Europe Corridor, or IMEC, and the International North-South Transport Corridor, INSTC. And the second part, discuss whether these initiatives can effectively counter China's hegemonic Belt and Road Initiative, or OBOR. Okay, this is simply BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, let's read it again. In the context of the evolving global order, critically examine the significance and potential challenges associated with India, IMEC and INSTC. So evolving global order, a keyword. You need to critically examine the significance and the challenges of IMEC and INSTC. Okay, so you need to critically examine the potential or the significance and potential challenges of IMEC and INSTC, India's transit projects or transport projects. Then you need to discuss whether these initiatives can effectively counter China's hegemonic Belt and Road Initiative. Okay. In the intro part, Archit is saying both IMEC and INSTC will significantly transform the trade and supply chain scenario for India. The impact. This is really an impactful intro, which is saying the potential impact of the projects. Okay, now Archit is discussing the significance of both these projects. Supply chain resilience, enable transport of critical minerals and resources with alternate countries or alternate sources. Logistics cost would be effective. IMEC will reduce the transport cost to Europe by 40%. You can also write a rough diagram of IMEC and INSTC and also comparing with BRI. It is a choice, but if you are good at writing world map within maybe 1 minute or something, you can go for that since it is a 15 marker. But there are enough content. If you have enough content to write the answer, you should go for just the text. Okay. Energy security, it will provide energy security because we have already seen in the first question that is India moving beyond its immediate neighborhood to Central Asia and all. So this will give us energy security. Then better integration of region, connection with Europe, Middle East and Central Asia. Okay, moving, and access to sea, gives landlocked countries of Central Asia access to sea. Right. Then, okay, you can also add too many points, but this is enough. Like 5 points are already written, and then challenges, you can write 5 points. Then in the second part, that is discussing whether it is a counter to or whether it is enough to counter China's BRI initiative, right? So what are the challenges? Recent conflicts like Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, because these two will definitely affect the ambitious projects, INSTC and IMEC. Then huge capital that is required to develop these projects, because India, this funding, we are not clear about the funding, and we are not that capable of funding like China, because China's debt, we cannot compete with China's debt trap policy. Concerns of countries for domestic producers. So if India is finding markets here through IMEC and INSTC, this will definitely affect the domestic market or the domestic producers of Central Asia and the West Asia. So cheaper imports can damage the competitiveness of domestic producers. And in the final part, or the discussion with BRI or comparison with BRI, here Archit has written OBR or BRI is much bigger. It is $1 trillion project, whereas India's IMEC and INSTC, the $1 billion projects. Okay, and also BRI is a worldwide project, whereas IMEC and INSTC, these are simply kind of regional projects. OBR has both maritime and land-based silk route, or it has 2 components, right? Okay. And value of investments much high. OBR, as China has pumped in a lot of money using debt trap diplomacy. So whether it is able to counter, so Archit is saying, Archit has written the no, it cannot counter initially, but yes, it can also be a counter through sustainable projects, because India is focusing on sustainable way. Also with the cooperation of the countries which are part of the same project. This is not just for India, but also for the region. And yeah, with the goodwill of India, you can also add that point that India's projects are, in the long term, it would be more sustainable and it can effectively counter China. But definitely, BRI is much bigger than India's projects. Okay, countries more aligned with rule-based order. Okay, this is what Archit is finally giving an analysis. Countries aligned with rule-based order, freedom, democracy and multilateral order would prefer and appreciate India's projects. Hence, we need to engage with more countries and tackle China like EU did with their Build Back Better policy or Build Back Better word. Okay, so this is how you should write answers. Again, I am saying you don't need to write these kind of answers, these kind of excellent answers in the very first day. It is not possible. This is with the effort, lot of effort and practice and consistency. But with that, you can also write very good answers like this. So this is about the art and science of answer writing through analyzing Archit's answer sheet. Thank you. Stay tuned.